Hello, hello. Thanks for coming in to the Wednesday ceramics class. We'll give this 2 more minutes. People come in. Today we're going to talk about making some leather hard forms. And leather hard slab building is something you might be into. Basically, you roll out a slab and you let the little shapes get stiff before you assemble them. And this allows you to maintain a lot of texture on these slabs since the clay is kind of rigid. So when you form it, it'll hold on to the texture well. This piece has, I was using hydrangea leaves yesterday to make the textures. So veiny leaves like hydrangea leaves make good textures. And yeah, so we'll be talking about that today. And then also we'll start with finishing up coyote from last week. Did we finish a coyote in this class last week? If we did, I won't spend too much time doing that. I can't remember if this class finished one. Just let me know in the chat. I'm thinking maybe Friday or Saturday to try a Zoom session again. That way we can get some more kind of participation kind of stuff going on. So look forward to that. Roberta, thanks for coming in. Thanks for the thumbs up. All right, it's 2:00. Let's start with some coyote work. And once again, if I finished a coyote in this class last week and you've already seen this stuff, just let me know and I will move on a little bit quicker. These will probably sit a little bit more kind of forward, I bet, once this is hanging on the wall. Once gravity is kind of doing its job a little bit. You see how they get a little bit more of a hang like that. This one's pretty close to dry. It's probably like 98% dry. Probably give this one more day and then terracige it. Paint some terracige on it. And also the ears. So let's see if we can get another coyote ready to dry out. This one is, okay, so we still got to close the mouth and shape it a little bit, it seems like. Change the shape a little. But, yeah, we could work on this. So first, I think where we'll start here, I'm going to go ahead and shave some of this cone that's like at the back of his head. I'm going to go ahead and shave some of that down with my wire tool. So the wire tool is making a rare rare appearance outside of the bag. A little bit better. A little bit better. And basically, I would just kind of look at my first one over here, since I'm more or less okay with the shape of this one. And I'll just try to emulate it a little bit more. Hey, BJ, thanks for coming in. Let's go ahead and close the mouth first. That will be the first thing we'll do. And by close the mouth, I mean we'll put a sheet of clay over this area here. And then over the bottom area too. The bottom mouth jaw thing. And I feel like that'll be a good place to start. We'll go ahead and cut it open too after that. And we'll at least do that sort of stuff. Maybe we can get teeth in also. Like I said, if we finished a coyote in this class last week, just let me know. Barbara, thanks for letting me know that you came in. I appreciate that. You are accounted for. Like I said, I think Friday and Saturday I'm going to try Zoom sessions again. See how how everything works, because that way we can start doing some more interactive kind of sessions. You guys can show work and share stuff, and it'll be fun, hopefully. So you'll notice I'm scoring the lip like that on both the top and the bottom. Did I miss an area there? It's not very good. This piece is it's like a young kind of leather hard dryness right now. It has a very slight amount of give to it. I would say maybe it's like more medium leather hard. Jackie, thanks for coming in. So we're going to roll out a thin slab here. Maybe like 1/8 of an inch thick, or between 1/8 and 1/4. And this is going to become the roof of the mouth. I mean, it's not really the roof of the mouth, but whatever that would be called. Just stabbing some air bubbles there because I am using recycled clay that I didn't wedge very well. So I rolled this out about 1/4 of an inch thick with the paint mixing sticks as my guides. And I'm just rolling them a little bit thinner now. I'm compressing the slab a little bit here, which honestly you don't really have to do for this one, but I need to do it because of it'll help me see some air bubbles if there's any air bubbles in my recycled clay here. If you're using fresh clay, you don't have to worry about that, of course. Okay. I wonder if we can get both on here, hopefully. Oh, yeah. So I'm holding this against the top of the mouth, which is kind of obscured to you guys. You see that? And I'm just going to carefully use my X-Acto knife and trace about where it's sitting. Now the thing about that, since the pinch pot form itself has kind of like a convex kind of surface to it, I'm going to need to take that into account. And the bottom of this shape needs to have a nice convex kind of shape to it, like that. Yeah. So since I'm doing this convex line right there, I do need to give there an extra like half of an inch to the edge here, and just give it a little bit more than maybe what it even needs, because you can always trim it. It's a lot harder to try to add clay though, so be mindful of that. But basically you're going to cut out a shape that's probably kind of like this, a little bit uneven there, but it's all right. And let me just set it in for a second and see what it looks like. Cool. Looks like I can maybe trim a little bit off there. So I'm going to score this surface here. So this mouth roof of the mouth kind of form thing, this clay is a lot softer than the clay that makes our head form. And it's very important whenever we do this that we make sure we score it really well and slip it really well and kind of smooth the stuff together really well. But then also we got to really dry it slow so that the dry areas and the wet areas can kind of equalize. And you can check on it every day to make sure it's not cracking while it's drying really slow like that. And if it starts a little crack or something, you can score that and maybe apply some coil or whatever to that to fix it. But that is something to kind of make sure you do. So I'm just going to apply a nice amount of slip there. I don't know if you can see that. You see that hole back there? I just stabbed and drilled that in with my X-Acto knife. You can go ahead and do that at this point. Whenever we do the hollow void with clay, you want that to vent, remember? So this roof of the mouth shape will it'll have like an air pocket because of this. So putting that hole there will help to ensure that it is able to vent. And you can do that later too, but might as well do it now while it's easy to get to, or easy-ish. So you get that funky mouth thing in there. And I like to use the rib tool for this. Just kind of press that firmly into place. Try to hold your rib tool so it's flush with the surface though, because if you hold it at a weird angle, you're gonna risk like cutting into the roof of the mouth weird or something like that. And I mean, it's not that big of a deal, I guess. The gift card rib tool, of course, comes in handy as usual. Cool. Hey, John, thanks for coming in. Okay. You can trim off some of the excess if you want to right now. You can wait a little bit too. It's not like it's going to get too bad if you wait a little bit. So you can do it now or later. Cool. So I have not been putting teeth on the top jaw or whatever it's called. I guess it's a jaw, right? I have not been putting teeth there. So honestly, it might be optional to close off the top the way I'm doing it. Might not really even have to do that. But the way I'm putting the teeth on the bottom jaw, I definitely need that to be kind of a surface there so I can attach stuff. Get that in there. So the top might be kind of optional. I'll show you what I mean here. See how having the bottom kind of flat and closed off like that, it gives me a surface to attach my teeth and the tongue and stuff like that. And let's see, the bottom, it looks like I need to take maybe just a little bit more off the bottom here. So let's see. just like a little bit, like maybe not even quite an eighth of an inch, but okay. So pretty much the same deal with the bottom here. Cut this off even. So same plan there. We're gonna do a convex shape so it kind of fits onto the convex surface of the back of the mouth there. And we'll add about like a half of an inch of length because of that. Oh, that's kind of weird. What the hell happened there? Oh yeah. If you want to do the hole, also you can do that hole. So try to use your X-Acto knife or something and just drill a hole straight down, like through that area. And that way, this hollow void has a vent. So let's see. See that down there? You can, once you have the bottom panel removed, you can kind of get in there and cut it from the inside. So it's there's a lot of ways to go about that. Got a lot of extra here. And then we're going to do the same thing with our flat gift card rib tool. And this is maybe, I've been doing the tongue as its own separate piece. But this is maybe something to think about. Having like a long, extended, lower kind of thing like that. Something to think about. If anything, this project has raised more questions than answers. It's been one of those things. But get those requests in, and I like these challenges. These are good. These are fun, interesting challenges. I know, like on the horizon, I've had a couple of requests now for juicers, so I want to do those coming up soon. Even though it's not maybe juicing kind of season, but it'll be all right. It could still be like a Christmas present, maybe. A good Christmas present project. Juicers. All right, cut some of the excess off here. It's like I always need to cut like a 1/4 of an inch off the bottom jaw. You see, like it doesn't look a little bit better if I do that. I've kind of been noticing that trend. So using that rib tool carefully, pressing down the mouth slab guy. Taking some of those edges off. All right. And you could even probably use a paintbrush. Yeah, if you want to get the back of a paintbrush in there, that could maybe be a good idea. Okay, let's go ahead and cut open the back or bottom or whatever you call that. The part that's going to become the wall hanging part. At this size, you can get away with kind of eyeballing that hook or whatever you call that. Just try to put it about in the middle, and you'll be fine. If you don't necessarily want to have the bottom completely open the way I do, you definitely don't. You could get away with just doing like a hole, I guess. But I feel like this is good because it takes some weight off the piece. The bottom, it's kind of almost like the newspaper. Like it's kind of necessary while we're building it to give the form some strength and stuff like that. But at this point, we don't really need it anymore. So I'll just cut out this kind of shape first, and I'll leave this side flat. And after I kind of get it open and inspect it and stuff like that, I'll kind of plan where to put my circle, half circle, whatever you call that, the hook. So let's see, an X-Acto knife should be good. Your needle tool is not going to be able to cut through the clay once it's this stiff. That's like a, if you only have the needle tool for cutting clay at this point, you're going to be kind of hurting. And yeah, you want to do this sort of thing before the clay is too dry, because cutting through thick clay like this can be, once it's dried out, is super hard to do. And you get more and more likely to cut yourself. So we can take out our funny smelling paper now. And just kind of be careful. The paper can get folded into the clay a little bit. So if there's a spot where it's really mashed in, it's possible to pull the paper loose and then the piece itself becomes kind of unhinged because of that. Paper out there. So you can see those two holes. Well, this one's maybe hard to see. Those were the vent holes for my mouth. At this point, I might take a little bit more off just to even this out with the rest of the walls. There's kind of like a weird thing happening here. I'm going to add a coil, it looks like, along this area here to even that out. And something else I've had to do with, like I had to do it on the dry one over there, is add a little bit of neck kind of clay just to give the piece a little bit more of an angle for when it hangs. I'll show you what I mean here. This kind of like 3/4 of an inch here didn't really exist originally. I had to build that on. And the reason for that is when it hangs now, it'll have just a little bit more of a kind of a angle out. Before it was a little bit more like that. So we could do something like that for this one too. Although it's optional, I don't necessarily think you have to do that. Even this a little bit. Something else you can do at this point, which is kind of optional, is if you want to thin the clay a little bit, you can do that. These loop tools that came in your toolkit, there's a slightly smaller one that's double-ended. It has like a circular end and a square end. That tool would probably be really good for this. All I have is the big one. Now, it's important that you don't go less than 1/4 of an inch on these. And honestly, 3/8 of an inch is maybe a little bit better. But you can scoop them out a little bit, especially if they're like 1/2 of an inch thick. You can take some clay out and just kind of take your time. You can feel it. You can kind of do this thing where you kind of feel how yeah, it can be tough. Sometimes you got to like snip at it to kind of like cut it out, Marie. Yeah, it definitely can be kind of like that went pretty easily when I took it out just there, but sometimes it can kind of be a nightmare trying to get it out. And I mean, it's somewhat optional. If we had the access to the school's kilns, for instance, I mean, it's somewhat optional. I don't know that I would bring pieces with a bunch of paper in them to like one of the commercial places like Milk Oolong or something like that. I don't know if I would do that, but at the school I was willing to burn out some amount of paper. Okay, so you can look at this, you can measure this area if you want to, so you can really plan for halfway here. Let's go ahead and take a look. See, so supposedly that's the halfway area. Yeah, you could get it out there somehow. You could burn it out. So this shape, it's not too bad. It's just like the end of a skateboard pretty much. It doesn't even really have to be rounded. Just as long as you use a long enough screw that the screw kind of sticks out a good 2 inches maybe, so it can really kind of hook under it. I'm going to give myself a little bit of extra room here by doing this. So it was a little bit close to that panel, but that's good. That's good. I got it good. There's like a solid 1/4 of an inch under there now. You can't really test the hanging kind of stuff until it's fired, unfortunately. So, but that should be fine. So at this sort of point, at this point with this sort of piece, you're gonna just visually inspect it. If there's areas that look like you need to add a coil to them to make sure they stay together, you should go ahead and do that. So basically all along this kind of area right here, I'm going to add a nice thick coil. If you recall the way we formed this, it was a pinch pot, and then this part down here was a slab. So it's not like we were able to get to the inside of that to, you know, really smooth it together and stuff like that before. So now that we can do that, we're kind of doing that now. You always know when you're using the loop tool, because you end up with like just a ton of this sort of stuff all over the place. So something like this, you can roll out a just normal sized coil real quick, score it really well, and then we're going to put some slip all along this area that we're going to fill in with our coil. And it seems to only really need it in this U kind of shape. This back area kind of seems like it's fine. So I'm not going to worry about the back area. All right. And then I'm going to trim the excess like that and like that. And just kind of pinch that coil into that crevice there. And it's a good idea to also rib maybe, or you could use your finger also and kind of press that further into the crack or crevice or whatever. All right. So that'll really help the that joint stay together and not crack. As long as we let it dry nice and slow, it should be good. Okay, so just looking at the I would let this stiffen up now for a couple hours, and then if you wanted to scoop a little bit and get the wall thickness to around 1/4 of an inch, you could do that. But let this wet coil dry out first for a couple hours at least. And then if you wanted to, you could go back and scoop a little bit. Don't go too thin, but a little bit should be all right. And then otherwise, we could refine the shape of this a little bit more. Where's my rib tool? If you need to shave a little bit off the outer surface, it's a good idea to do that first before you scoop out the inside. If you scoop out the inside, you might not have very much room to kind of shave off clay from the outside. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And the gift card rib tools they're pretty good for scraping off clay. A rasp tool could maybe even be used. Once the clay's leather hard, a rasp tool. It's kind of like a cheese grater kind of thing. If there's like weird undulations that you don't like, you can work those with a rib tool. I mean, this can be as kind of like angular or as kind of wavy and floppy as you want. So a lot of that's just kind of optional stuff when you're refining it. So there's kind of like a divot in this area, so I can score that and put a little coil in there. The key with these little divots and stuff, or if you have like little craters or things like that, is making sure that the form is kind of stiff and that the clay that you're plugging it with is quite soft. That way the clay that you're plugging it with just kind of smashes right into the surface. And this clay is firm enough that it doesn't also get smashed down. That's kind of like a thing that can take a little bit of time to figure it out. But it is generally, when people are having problems with that, it's because this form's still kind of soft. So when they try to fill up a crater or a divot or something, the repair clay is too stiff and it just damages the piece. So you can add some clay and then rib it a little bit, let it stiffen up. I don't know what it is, but there's always like a 1/4 of an inch for me that I can like remove from this bottom jaw. I don't know what that's about. I want to see if I can get this bottom jaw to give me just a little bit more space here. If I rib. Yeah, so you can't really push too much on the jaw or else you're going to crack it like I just did. So just something to keep in mind. That's not the end of the world, though. It's totally fixable. Something like that, what I would do and you can do this with any cracks or anything you might come across. Just score over the crack like this. And then this is kind of soft, so I'm going to let it stiffen for 15 or 20 minutes. But then I'm going to put a little coil kind of over this and massage it and smooth it into that area. And that'll kind of help fix that stuff. Basically, I think I'm happy though now. I just wanted to kind of force the bottom to open a little bit more. And I think I've gotten away with that for at least the time being. When I cut off the bottom, I opened up this little hole here. You see that hole? So I can fill that. No problem. And then I usually kind of cut the top snout back at a bevel too. Well, usually, I mean, the past two that I've done this. And it starts to give you a little bit more of a snout kind of thing going on. And then using like a little loop tool like this, you can take a little bit of material off in addition. Get it this side over here. In addition to the kind of like scooping kind of thing, the beveling kind of thing. You take a little bit more off. And that helps it to start looking a little bit more nose-like, I guess. And I'm just scooping a little bit here. This is like a 1/16 of an inch of scoop. Not much. Just a little bit. So that's the sort of stuff you might do with the muzzle area down there. And we'll put some teeth on there. Also, I think we have time for that maybe. Maybe another 15, 20 minutes on this guy. So this crack here, when I kind of bent my mouth a little bit more aggressively than I should have. And there's like a tiny one on this side too. So this is just a little plug of clay that I scored really good and put over that crack. And yeah. That should fix itself at this point. I mean, I don't think it'll come back. If the clay is really stiff and it cracks like that, you might have to kind of soften it first, kind of apply some moisture to that area, let it sit in the bag for 20 minutes, and then maybe even apply more moisture and let it sit for another 10 or so minutes. But this was not to that point of stiffness, so it was still pretty quickly fixable. So I'm just kind of like tapping it with my finger like that, and then ribbing it. Cutting off excess stuff if I need to. Okay. So for the teeth, it's important that the mouth be pretty good, pretty close to the shape that you want, because it's going to be hard to, it's going to be hard to change the mouth much once the teeth are on there. So you want to make sure that it's about what you want. And what I'll do is I'll kind of plan. You see that line I drew there? I'll kind of plan a little area that the teeth will line up with. I'll put a line like that so I know to try to line up the front of my teeth with that line. Once I get a couple teeth made here. And the teeth, the way I would recommend doing it is either rolling out a little kind of ribbon amount of slab or even rolling a coil and pressing it to be kind of ribbon like this kind of thing. So whatever is easiest, either rolling the clay a little bit or doing the coil and then pressing it. And this clay needs a little bit of moisture on it since it's been sitting here. Oops. Now we'll cut it. Looks like I need to make them a little bit shorter. You got to work kind of quickly with these little shapes. Be really careful. So it can be kind of infuriating, the teeth and stuff like that. Just very slightly shorter than that. My recommendations for stuff like this is just make sure the clay is nice and wet. If your clay is already dry and you're doing these little things, they're going to dry too fast and it's going to become impossible to score them and place them and stuff. And you don't really have to even place them first. You can score them and place them, and you don't necessarily have to worry about planning it out perfectly. But if you want to, you can. You can, put two in there. Kind of set up maybe like 3 or 4 of them, and then you can take them out and score them and score the mouth area too. So pretty quickly, that starts to look pretty cool. Let me know, Kathy, or other people also. Let me know if my stream is. Let me know if the stream's messing up. Last I had seen, my internet was working good though. I'll text my third party. My third party person. Huh. It's okay now? All right. So then we can carefully and quickly take those teeth off like that and score the bottom of them and the floor of the mouth. That's kind of interesting. So that tooth kind of bumps the top. That's all right. So my favorite aspect of the Blue Coyote example piece was the tongue. If you look at back at that image, I think I sent that as part of the email last week. If I didn't, just shoot me an email and I'll send you the Blue Coyote picture. But my favorite part was the way the tongue was attached, so it was sitting like in front of the teeth, like that. Like it was like, meh, meh. I really dug that, and I was like, if I'm keeping anything, I'm keeping that. So that's how I did this one too. See how that it's like the tongue attaches to the front of the teeth / bottom of the mouth. I really like that. I think that's a fun look. So we'll make a tongue and stick that on here. And probably cut the eye holes and maybe the ear holes too. Oops, banged one of my teeth over. Basically, with the teeth, I would just be really careful. Try not to touch them or bang into them. Let the slip stiffen up for like maybe 20 minutes. And then if you have a little brush or a Q-tip, once these are a little bit stiffer, you can try to massage a little bit more slip along the base of the tooth on the front, and also the back side too is a good idea. So that's kind of the what I would recommend you do. I mean, alternatively, if you have a big brush, you can just glop some down there. But yeah, let that dry a little bit, and then you can start working a little bit of Q-tip down into the base of each tooth. And this one you'll see I did 2 side teeth on each side, which I think look pretty good. So I would recommend you do that too. I mean, this mouth's long enough, maybe the like 3 side teeth would be cool. But all right. We're just going to roll out a 1/4 of an inch thick slab here. And the tongue is basically like a half of a skateboard kind of shape. And it doesn't need to be very big. So, just if you got some extra clay like this, you can roll it out. I'm going to compress both sides. But if your clay is fresh, you probably can just compress one side and that'll be fine. Careful. All right, so we get this half of a skateboard. Just cutting off some excess here and making it a little bit shorter. There's kind of a limit with how far these can stick off. It's like an anteater. Okay, maybe just one little bit more, like another 1/8 of an inch, maybe. And then something I'm going to do here is I'm going to kind of remove a little bit of material here, kind of like where my finger is, so that the tongue will have a little bit more surface area when I attach it. So I lightly make a line like that. You see, like that. And this is maybe somewhat optional, although I do think that this gives you, since it lets you kind of attach the tongue like here and then also wrapped around a little bit, I do think it increases the attachment strength of the tongue. So I'm just going to really carefully here with my little loop tool remove some of this material. And you can also do it with your X-Acto knife. If you don't have one of these little loops, you can just kind of cut it, the clay laterally like that. I think I can take just a little bit more out there. You don't want to go too thin here. I mean, I definitely would say not thinner than 1/8 of an inch. This tag shape, whatever it is, leave it at least 1/8 of an inch thick. So you can score the clay really good. Score, score, score. Set this aside. While the tongue stiffens for just a minute, we can go ahead and cut out some eyeball shapes, huh? And basically, I would just kind of lightly do the lines at first. Generally, I kind of have to place it 2 or 3 times before I get a placement that I'm happy with. And you can kind of come back in that inner line, that inner side, and you can bevel some of the clay back if you need to, just to clean up both the outer carving line, but also that inner line, because that's visible too, right? So you want this to, that inner line there, you want that to also be kind of clean. So if you need to, you got to get your tool in there, maybe at an angle even, and cut off the jaggedy bits and stuff if there are some. And then, of course, it's super hard to get them even on both sides. I mean, luckily, you can't really see both eyes completely at the same time. So if you get them pretty close, you'll be fine. And the first one I did, they're actually a little bit kind of off from each other. And honestly, you can't even tell unless you really, really look for it. So don't worry. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good when you're placing your eyeballs. Come on. The clay's really thick up here, I guess. There we go. And I've had slightly different ear placement on these so far. And because of how limited you are in being able to put the ear in and hang the piece up and see how the ear looks and stuff like that, I feel like I'm not really going to know what the best ear placement thing is. I'm not really going to know until after I fired one, I guess. Unfortunately. But I have one ear already made here. I can kind of place it and at least see about what I can expect. Try to picture another one over there. Yeah, so maybe a little bit over here would be better. Maybe in a little bit. And you can a little bit play around with these because these ear holes are, since they're just circles, they're not too bad to plug if you cut one out and you're not happy with it. I mean, they're not too bad. You can kind of plug them with wet clay surprisingly well. Although, you know, as much as possible, you want to get it right on the first or second try. Yeah, I think a little bit more on the side is better here. Careful. So basically, something like this still needs some more refining work. Yeah, maybe like move that one over a touch. So this still needs some more refining work, but basically the things we've done are what you're going to keep doing as you finish sculpting this. Adding maybe 2 more teeth. Scooping out clay from the inside. That sort of thing. Oh yeah, the tongue. Put that tongue on real quick. Clay's really soft here. Sorry, I got to turn this around just a minute here. I would let this stiffen kind of upside down till the tongue picks up some strength. If you put it laterally now, I feel like it's soft enough, it might just kind of droop and eventually break off. So yeah, 2 or 3 more teeth along here. Shaving off a little bit more clay. Scooping out more clay. Eventually getting about something like this. And then slowly letting it dry. All right. Thanks, Melissa. Let's go ahead and move on and start talking about some leather hard construction techniques. So we've been doing some leather hard techniques while we finish projects, but of course there's leather hard slab building, which is basically where the whole process involves leather hard slabs. And you can use this to make forms that are more rigidly geometric than what we've been able to make so far. The clay, when it becomes leather hard, it has a kind of a almost kind of wood-like quality to how you can work with it. By which I mean, like, these shapes have to be kind of exactly measured and cut and stuff like that. So for some people, this will be a lot of fun, and it will be the preferred method of working with clay, even for some people, but not everyone. I'm going to go ahead and put all these scraps into my slop bucket real quick, and I'll be right back. And of course, one of the best things about leather hard building is you can use various texture forming implements. In this case, hydrangea leaves, and you can get some nice textures onto the leather hard slabs. And since you let the clay stiffen considerably before you form it, you can a lot of times, well, with some practice, you can get kind of good at saving the textures without smashing them away. So for instance, the butter dish project, we could definitely have put textures into that before forming it, but just the nature of forming that sort of piece, it would be extremely difficult to maintain the textures on the corners and stuff like that. So this is an example from yesterday, and I have some slabs already leather hard over here. I don't have enough to make this exact form, but it'll be all right. What the hell kind of insect is that? I'm gonna put this in a bag. Wait, that wasn't the bag, was it? Was that the bag I was using? Yes, it was. Never mind, I found it. So with leather hard building, it's going to be very important that you make some paper templates. So once again, cardstock, cereal boxes, beer cases, that sort of thin cardboard is the best material for that. And did I bring paper in? If this is going to be your first leather hard slab project, I would recommend maybe doing a cube or something a little bit more simple. A cube is going to be 6 squares, so you can cut out 6 evenly sized squares, let them leather hard, and then kind of follow the procedure we're going to do. I'm going to do a little bit more complicated shape, but it's not too bad. I mean, you could definitely do this for your first leather hard project, no problem. But it's probably not the ideal first leather hard slab project. So that form you noticed, it had a hexagon kind of bottom, a hexagonal bottom, if you will. And so I'm going to show you how to make a hexagon real quick. This back when we were still meeting on campus, a student had requested a hexagon kind of jar form, so we had to look up how you make a hexagon. This is the compass tool we talked about a few weeks ago. You have a strip of paper with a couple holes in it. Put a toothpick in one end here. Keep it steady. Just the pen. Eventually the pen will start to draw. You make a circle like this, right? And then you just kind of make an arbitrary kind of line like that at some point. And that line where it intersects the circle, go ahead and stab your toothpick there. With your compass tool. And then the very same hole you just used to make the circle, the radius that you just used, you're going to use that to make a line here. And then you'll pick up this tool, put the toothpick on that line where it intersects the circle, and you kind of just walk your way around the circle that way. And you should end up with 6 evenly spaced lines like this. I'm doing this on notebook paper, but once again, you should do cereal box or beer case or something like that. I just didn't have any extra paper. extra cardstock. And once you get back to this one, it should theoretically line back up pretty closely. Or in my case, not, it's like an 1/8 of an inch difference somehow, but pretty closely. I wonder if it's because of this bump. Just like that, I guess. Okay, so these 6 lines where they intersect the circle, you're going to connect them like from this one to this one, from here to here. You're going to connect them sequentially. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And at the end of that, you should have a very nice hexagon. So that's how we did the hexagon. Just kind of throwing that out there because once again, the first time we did this, we had to figure out how to make a hexagon. So it's part of the process pretty much. So that's the hexagon. And then for the sides, if you're doing the piece I'm doing with a bunch of triangles, this form takes 12 triangles. You have 12 or 6 that are going this orientation and 6 that are going this orientation. And the way you make those triangles is measure how long these sides are on your hexagon. 2 inches. It looks like 2.5 inches. And so you know the base of the triangle will need to be that long. So I'll make a line like this and then make a 2.5 inches, 0, 2.5. And then I'll also make a line here at the halfway distance, which in the case of 2.5 is 1.25. So you'll have 3 lines or 3 kind of marks like that on your line. The middle mark that you make, from that, try to make you can use a T-square or one of those rulers that they use in textiles that has like a grid on it. Or you can just eyeball also. You can eyeball a line In the case of this, 5 inches long. I don't have enough room on my paper here, but let's say 5 inches. Pretend that's 5 inches. It's really just like 2. And then these two marks you attach to that point, like so. Oops. That wasn't very close even. So this line here, you know, if it's 5 inches, it ends up being taller. So that's how you make that kind of triangle. And yeah, like I said, do this with cardstock kind of cardboard. Thanks, Sandy. My hexagon here, I did this with this kind of corrugated cardboard, which you think would be better. Like you're thinking like, well, if this stuff's good, then corrugated cardboard is going to be even better. But corrugated cardboard is utterly awful for templates. It's maybe even worse than notebook paper because of how bad it warps just from like a little bit of moisture, how horribly it warps. So I would not recommend using corrugated cardboard, but that's all I had, so I did it on this hexagon. So we're going to roll out a slab. We'll cut out some shapes with, we'll put some texture on it with our hydrangea leaves, and then we'll cut out some shapes. And then I have some shapes pre-leather hardened over here that we'll work on assembling. And then next week we'll finish this up. Will be the plan. Wire tool. So for that form I had showed you, that's 12 triangles. So you got to kind of think about how many shapes you're going to need. And that's another reason maybe to start with a cube or with something that has, you know, a little bit less kind of demanding I don't know, cutting requirements. You're going to be looking for 1/4 of an inch thick here. It might depend a little bit on your texture you're using. Like if you have a texture mat that maybe it needs to make very deep textures. If that's the case, maybe 3/8 of an inch thick is a little bit better, but okay. So this maybe is a little bit more than what I'll need, and that's all right. Knife tool. Where's my X-Acto knife? I'm just cutting off some excess stuff here. Well, cut off that. Okay. Oh yeah, it's super hot today. What the hell? It was like cooling down for a while, and then all of a sudden today it's just like rearing back. Although I'm back at my office now, so my office has this kind of, it's kind of like situated in this little concrete alcove that's a lot cooler than the surrounding areas. So yeah, it's not too bad, but it is. Yeah, it's pretty hot today. Yeah, what the hell? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and compress this slab, and then we're going to do some texture. Wooden rib tool, where did you go? Wooden rib tool, where did you go? Stand up. I'm sitting on it. Okay, so go ahead and compress this real nice. And textures. So they sell texture mats, and you can pick those up at Freeform or probably Amazon. Shelf lining plastic or rubber or whatever the hell that is. You can use that kind of stuff. They make some like sink liners that you can use. Those silicone pot holders, some of those have some cool textures. Leaves, you got to use leaves that have like nice big veins. So these are hydrangea leaves. Plastic leaves probably have pretty good veins in them, but just like some regular leaf might not be veiny enough to really do anything. So you gotta use your leaves kind of specifically like that. And holy shit, what was that? Good lord. I think the Amazon Prime truck just bottomed out over there. is ridiculous. Just like scrape. These hydrangea leaves, you'll notice the kind of stem part is a lot thicker than the rest of the veins. So one thing that's advisable here, if I can get my scissors, one thing that is advisable is to maybe trim out the thicker part of the vein like that. Yeah, there you go. So this way, when you press this leaf into the clay to get the texture, if that stem part's there, it'll get pushed in so deep that it kind of cuts the clay in half. So it's a good idea to kind of remove those thicker areas. And yeah, we'll just go ahead and start placing them. Something that's kind of unfortunate about these leaves is they're not like one use necessarily, but they do a lot better their first use than they do their second use. I'll say that. Like the first use, you will get a lot more like really nice, crisp, maybe like a little bit more of like the finer kind of things like that. Those little fine veins, those capillary looking things. But the second use, I don't know if it's just because the leaf might be kind of wet or what, but the second use, you don't get as much fidelity on the veins, unfortunately. But hydrangeas are really good for these veiny leaves that they give you. So I'm just kind of lightly pressing them into place so they don't move around. Okay. Okay, so we can carefully peel these up now. Maybe. You can maybe see like on this sort of area where the thicker stem is, it cuts so deep into the clay, it pretty much just cuts it in half there. Well, let's see how many triangles we can cut here. So this form, this is 12 triangles here. So this is a pretty ambitious one. If you're going to do one of these, be prepared to cut a lot of triangles out and do a lot of beveling and stuff like that. So you got to be really careful with this because you don't want to add additional texture to your clay. It might even be a good idea if you have really fresh clay that's kind of soft. It might be a good idea to let it sit for 5 minutes before you start tracing out shapes even. So now you're going to very carefully trace the triangle shape out. Your very first triangle shape. Is that too far away? I apologize. So something that's surprisingly important, but you probably wouldn't even think about till you're doing this, is that when you have all these little shapes of clay you're trying to cut out, it's not quite like a sheet of stickers where they're gonna have a sticker here and then like a half an inch over here there's a sticker and then over here there's a sticker, and then you can peel the negative space away and it's like a big funky looking sticker. The clay's not really like that. You don't really want there to be any negative space between your shapes. So these triangles, we cut them out as kind of like a big parallelogram that's made of triangles. So if you can see that line there. Does that show up at all on the screen? Do you see what I did there? You kind of do that sort of thing. So there's no negative space. If you had like a triangle here, and then a triangle here, and then a triangle here, you cut those out, and that's great. But now you're trying to remove the negative space, and you just can't do it without messing up these shapes, and it takes forever, and it's a pain in the ass. So in order to make this shape, you trace one triangle, and then you line up a straight edge like this with the bottom line of that triangle. As best as you can. So you make that long line like this, and you can use that to kind of like place your triangles and you end up making this kind of shape. So I have one triangle like this down here. I'm going to flip this over. Right next to that first triangle, I'm going to trace a second triangle. I'm going to line it up as best as I can so that these sides are, perfectly lined up. If you can get it pretty close, you'll be fine. I mean, pretty damn close. I'm talking like 98%. 98%. If you can work within 98% accuracy, leather hard building is going to be totally fun. All right, so flip it over. Flip it over. And you just got to keep being really careful. You don't want to smash the texture or scratch it and add like additional textures on accident. Just handle everything as carefully and softly as you can. Take your time. Like I said, if you're in the 12 triangle cylinder kind of thing, it gets pretty tedious. So. Hey, dude. I'm in class, so just don't say anything too controversial. You can say stuff praising Google because I'm on YouTube. So.
Oh yeah, all hail to Google.
Yeah. So that's 10 triangles. Like I said, that shape is 12. This kind of more ambitious shape, you got to cut out 12 of those things. So it gets pretty tedious by the time you're done. I'll go ahead and get 2 more here. I guess they won't have texture because I ran out of leaves, but that's all right. No one will have to know. $11, $12. Let's see. We'll hold on a sec. Well, okay. Okay, we'll do 11 triangles and cut out this hexagon just so you can see the hexagon getting cut out too. But there would need to be 1 more triangle. So just kind of imagine that. The hexagon shape, since it's the bottom, is not as important if it has leaf texture on it or not. A lot of the times when you're handling this and assembling it, the bottom, it's really difficult to maintain texture on that without smashing it away. So you don't really have to worry about the bottom having texture. It's not as important. So might as well go ahead and put that on here like this. Hopefully that line over there was all right. Yeah, so it could be worse. Yeah. Well, since you mentioned Zoom there, Sandy, I'm actually going to give some Zoom a shot. I think Friday or Saturday, I'm going to try Zooming again. Because if we can if my Zoom account's working again, then we can start doing like a little bit more like interactive kind of things. And you guys can start doing some presentations of what you're working on and stuff of that nature. So, like I said, that kind of big shape here, there's no negative space. You can kind of see that coming together now. Nope. Just take your time cutting these out. You don't have to do it fast. Okay, so we got, let's pretend we have 12 triangles. We have 11, but we're close. When you cut these inner lines, go ahead and try to cut towards the middle as much as possible. So you can start at the edge and then cut inwards, but then don't go all the way through the edge because you'll probably pull the clay a little bit as you go through the edge. So go ahead and come back in and cut from the edge inwards once you get closer to that edge like that. When you pull out your knife tool, though, you got to be careful too, because you can still kind of damage it like that. All right, so you carefully cut all these inner lines like this, and you're going to leave these triangles now maybe for like half an hour, and then you can probably carefully separate them, rigid enough that you can at least kind of handle them without totally distorting them. So go ahead, let those stiffen up about a half of an hour maybe, and then you can separate them, and then maybe give them another half hour. If they're at like this size, maybe an hour will be good. Let's see, I'm going to shift this over. So if you maybe you want to do the hexagon piece, but you don't want to do all 12 triangles, well, that's all right. You can do 6, and you can make a weird pyramid. And I think that's what I'm going to do right now. So sorry. Okay. So this is going to be my base. And then I don't have 12 triangles, I don't think. Yesterday, I don't think I got 12 cut out. So I'm just going to choose the 6 best ones. One, two, three. 4, 5, 6. And we'll kind of do like a funky triangle kind of thing. It'll be cool. I don't think I've done this shape yet. The hexagon pyramid. So the leather hard projects, if you had like a fun time cutting out all your shapes, that's good. You haven't been broken yet by the process, but this next procedure is definitely going to get on your nerves. You'll need to bevel every single corner of interior clay that comes together. So on this one here that has 12 triangles, that's a lot. That's like 40 bevels by the time you're done. It takes a good amount of time. Do I have texture on this one? No, I don't. So you can kind of see why the texture gets hard to maintain here, because you have to flip the piece over and then cut these bevels. So it kind of becomes kind of a delicate procedure at this point. You really got to be careful about not pressing down on the clay too hard. It might even be a good idea to work on clean paper or something. Clean, non-bent paper. Because the canvas is kind of rough and it'll mess up texture, especially if it's subtle textures. So the closer these bevels can be to the right kind of orientation, that's very advantageous. The less cleanup work you have to do once the piece is drying. So like next week we'll have to finish these up, but for instance, this one, I took too much clay off on my bevels. So you can see there's a lot of gaps there that I'll have to clean up with coils. So that'll be very tedious. You could use the bevel cutting tool if you've picked one up, but the clay, since it's stiffer now, the bevel cutting tool might not be able to cut through it. So you might have to use your X-Acto knife on these for beveling these. So bevel and score, and then place this into your bag. You don't want these to dry out too much while you're beveling each individual one, so you do want to put those into your bag as you're working. Yesterday I had let these dry out quite a bit by the time I was assembling it, and it was really fighting me when I was assembling it because the clay, once it's past a certain point of dryness, it really kind of will lose its any sort of like friendliness about sticking to its self. So you got to keep the canvas clean. If there's crap on the canvas and you put your texture down onto it, your texture will pick that up. So, like I said, it becomes a delicate procedure at this point. If you're trying to maintain the texture, it becomes a very delicate procedure. It's almost like you need a clean room almost to kind of do this. Or, like a relatively speaking, a clean room. Like a clean room for a ceramics artist is like a, probably not very clean. And one notable thing here, when you're scoring the edges, you got to be somewhat careful. You don't want to come around on the edge here and damage the front side, since that'll kind of like mess up your texture. So you got to be a little bit careful. Try to stay back from that front edge a little bit. If the clay is really stiff, you can use an X-Acto knife to do some extra scoring to make sure it's kind of substantial. All right. So you'll notice here I put a little bit of moisture onto these corners before I bevel them, and that's because they are, they're a little bit stiffening up. So I need to get some moisture on there, or else it'll get kind of crispy and stuff when I'm trying to bevel it. Where are we, like halfway there now? We're getting close. One, two. Okay, is that 6? Oh wait, one more. One more, and we'll assemble this, and then we'll save the kind of finishing it off and refining it for next week. All right. So you have all your edges beveled and scored. If you're doing a cube, you have 6 squares that are beveled and scored, beveled and scored. If you're doing whatever this shape is I did first, you have 12 triangles that are beveled and scored. A whole bevy of triangles that are beveled and scored. And if you're doing a weird pyramid kind of thing, you have a couple of shapes like what I have. Hopefully they have not dried too much. If these are too dry, go ahead and kind of like make a single layer of them like this and then spray them down and keep them in a bag for maybe 20 minutes before you start trying to assemble them. If these are really stiff, they're not going to like being pushed together. So just something to keep in mind. Okay. So kind of like with the scoring, the slip, you're going to want to be a little bit careful here. You don't want to get the slip too much on the outside where the texture is because it'll mess with your texture. And somewhat counterintuitively, you're going to want to start with 2 walls. That way they can lean together. Just kind of gently. You don't have to try to firmly attach them yet. In fact, you kind of want them to have a little bit of looseness in how they're attached still so you can shimmy them around as you need to. A form like this, you're going to want to start with maybe 3 triangles, like this one, and this one. Kind of get the 3 of them together and on there, which can be a little bit difficult. So you might have to start with 1 and then get the other 2 on there. But basically, having 2 walls, they'll kind of lean together. And surprisingly, that works. So like I said, don't really tap them into place yet. Kind of a little bit loose. Keep it a little bit loose here. You want to be able to shimmy these a little bit as needed. So I'm just kind of lightly pressing on those edges. I want to make sure I don't get any moisture or slip onto my fingers, because if I press the texture while I have that on my fingers, it'll mess it up. So I'm being kind of mindful of that. But you can kind of see how I can press it and the leaf texture is staying pretty well. So that's the advantage of working with leather hard clay. Well, one of the advantages, at least. And you can even carefully kind of flip it over. Kind of work these joints too. All right. So that's, you get that assembled like that. And we'll work on finishing it up next week. But you can see the textures are pretty well maintained, at least to this point. So kind of funky. So same base, same shape of triangle, but this is 12 triangles alternating right side up and upside down. And this is 6, and you just kind of lean them towards each other to make more of the pyramid kind of shape. So yeah, from the same template, 2 different forms. Something to think about. Well, guys, thanks for coming in today. Yeah, Marie, I mean, we'll be back someday, hopefully. I mean, God, Lord only knows when that'll be. But keep your fingers crossed. Thanks for coming in today, guys. Send me your requests. I'm thinking, we're going to try Zoom again this weekend. So if my Zoom account's working again, we'll probably try to work in some more interactive kind of elements. Okay, have a good one.